Scott, Anne, both of you run businesses that record, process, store billions of pieces of data. And businesses that have been empowered or enabled somewhat by the reduction in storage costs. So we'll start with Scott. Scott, this huge amount of data that you're processing, recording, your view from space, what are you doing with all this stuff?
Yeah, so right now we have a couple hundred terabytes of data that we store in Amazon. And the big thing about geospatial imagery, content of Earth from space, is that up until quite recently, it was offline. It was stored in warehouses almost. And so key innovation in the industry just in the last few years has been able to get all that offline data, huge data sets, into something where it's readily available. And it's available for use, and we can access it via APIs and all the rest of it. Frankly, a couple years ago, 5 or 6 years ago, our business would have been impossible, just because the cost of storage would have been far too much.
Okay. And Interana, similarly, you process huge amounts of data every day. And a simple swipe on Tinder did you hear the silence? A simple swipe on Tinder sets in motion a huge reaction and action within Interana. So how do you achieve, through a simple swipe by a user here, how do you achieve such insights, and what do you do with the data, and how do you process that?
So let me answer your first question, so in the 1970s, when relational databases like Oracle were invented, storage cost 7 orders of magnitude more than it costs today. And when you store something in a relational database, what it looks like is a snapshot in time. It looks like, this is this slice of time, consider it just like a Polaroid picture. And now that storage is so much cheaper, almost free, and you can put giant amounts of it in the cloud, you can store what we call streaming, continuous time. We actually call it event data, so data that's triggered by any sort of events, and it's very rich data. So that is the data that we're looking at today. And our company runs data sets of over 1 trillion events and allows you to easily access it from an easy web UI. And a number of our customers that include Microsoft Bing, Tinder, which is very exciting. I believe Sean Rad is here. And companies like SurveyMonkey and Nextdoor, Reddit, and Imager run their entire clickstreams and then make it available to everyone in their company, not just the data scientists. And so let's take Tinder for an example, because you brought them up and they're very exciting. Tinder has 1.8 billion swipes a day, and they make 26 million matches. And in order for all that data to be readily available for their marketing team, their engineering team, their product development team, their executives, you need a very different kind of database, different than a relational database. What we've done is we've built something that's specifically for time. And so we've taken time as a simplification that allows you to ask questions like, what kind of matches are people making at what times of day? Things like how are my users engaged? What leads up to churn? All sorts of patterns through time.
Okay.
So that's what we're doing.
Okay, that's an interesting. So you've contextualized what Interana do with Tinder. Scott, from your perspective and what Urthecast do, your work with Pepsi, which I think is a really interesting one, and you're kind of creating what I would call kind of my view as opposed to street view from space. Tell us a little bit about what you're doing with Pepsi with that.
Yeah, so we have cameras in space. Right now we have 4 different cameras. We have 2 on the space station and the 2 other satellites that are just orbiting Earth, and we take all that imagery and we view our industry as a pyramid, frankly. And at the top of the pyramid you have government customers, ministries of forestry, farming, mapping. That's what people do with pictures of Earth from space. And then we have a business component, analytics, information, economic forecasting. That's what, you can use these geospatial data sets for that. And then at the bottom is the consumer level. And so the idea behind the bottom of the pyramid is that we take all our imagery, we wrap it up into an API, which is now available, and you can log in and you can enter your address. And you can see a picture of your house taken 2 days, 2 weeks, 8 weeks, 6, kind of scroll back and forth in time, change, and then at the same time find out when it's going to be above you next. It'll be above my address in 4 hours and 57, 56, 55 minutes. You can organize outdoor events around when you get image from space. And then the data gets dropped down. A couple hours later, it's streaming. We can process it over the web. You can download it, edit it, remix it, share it on top of that. So with Pepsi, they came to us about a year ago and said they're going to relaunch the Pepsi Challenge. And it's not the difference between Coke and Pepsi. It's we challenge you to do something different, go above and beyond, change the world. It's a lifestyle brand. And so they organized a bunch of outdoor events around the world, China, India, Eastern Europe, throughout North America, that got imaged from Earth, from space, imaged from space, from aerial, from drones, from the ground level. And this imagery then got wrapped up into a movie, into a short movie that's coming out over the next couple weeks. And the imagery of Earth ends up saving the world, frankly, is kind of what happens. And it's starring Usher, he's singing. It's in post-production now, but it goes to the consumer level, which is when you see Earth from space, it changes you.
Yeah.
It changes how you view Earth. It changes your view of your role on Earth, and space is popular, and we kind of fit into that.
So do you think it kind of changes your perspective almost of the...
It does.
Yeah.
So when you talk to astronauts, they all say that going to space changes them.
Right, okay.
They come back fundamentally different than they were when they went up, all with a greater sense of planet stewardship. There's no borders, there's no countries, we're all on the ground together. And so being able to take that content and wrap it up into an API and then make it available for different use cases through an open source API is basically what Urthecast is doing. It's at the heart of it.
And it makes you want to drink more Pepsi?
It makes you want to change the world.
So Scott talking about use cases, and I read somewhere that I think at one point you even commented that Interana, you process data so quickly, you do so much, you give insights so fast that sometimes your customers, they almost say, no, you can't be doing that fast for us. We like it, but it's not that fast. How do you give mid-level management a dashboard, reporting, analytics so quickly over what you've just mentioned, billions of pieces of data?
So relational databases, like I was saying, have been around since the 70s, and people are very used to them. And they're very good at doing point lookups.
Yeah.
And data now has changed to be this really rich, continuous time data. And the way you get answers out of that is you look at how it's changing over time. And that is a completely different kind of paradigm than point lookups. So we built our entire backend. Everything is built around time, optimized for scans in time, which allows us to look for patterns. And so when you can look for patterns, you can see all sorts of really interesting things about user behavior. So if you think about the word behavior, you can't answer questions about behavior with point lookup.
Okay.
And so the way we do it is everything is simplified. And so I mentioned that the back end is simplified for time, but the front end is also simplified by time. So we assume that when you're looking at it, that time is the first thing that you're looking at. So you want to say, over this period of time, show me people who made matches on Tinder. Show me people that searched for this word on Bing. Show me, all sorts of things. And it allows people to, in a much more intuitive way, answer these questions. So I've read a lot of statistics about how we're running out of data scientists. We just don't have enough data scientists. The world has got to focus on producing more data scientists. And the reason they say that is because a data scientist is very skilled at shoehorning these behavioral questions into these snapshot kind of mentality. And so now we've given people a tool where they no longer have to do this shoehorning. And everyone from a marketing person who has never used a data tool in their life to a very high-tech analyst that wants to answer really sophisticated questions, everyone can use the same interface.
Okay, that's interesting because you bring me on to, I was going to ask you about business models, right? And so your business model, I think in a sense you've alluded to, how you do business. Scott, from Urthecast's perspective, taking pictures from space, that's the kind of thing that wows us. but turning that into meaningful revenue for companies, whatever sort of companies they may be. Where do you see opportunities? What do you see from space that creates an opportunity for revenue?
Yeah, so you can see it comes down to analytics. It's basically what it comes down to, analytics. And so, we take pictures of the Midwest, and we could take pictures of all the farms in the U.S. every couple of weeks, and we sell those to the U.S. Department of Agriculture. They can look at the farms, and they can look at spectral bands outside of what the human eye can see, and they can determine if that farm should be watered, harvested, planted, cut, whatever it is. We take all of our data and we wrap it up into an API, and then we make it available. And so right now, there's a few hundred app developers that are kind of in the private beta right now. One of them, as an example, has mapped every factory in China. They take pictures of the factories in China, and they count the cars. And the more cars in the factory, it might point to economic production. They'll take pictures of the trains leaving the factory. And the longer the train, perhaps it means something. They can take pictures of the rivers at the back, and the more pollution, so you can tell, you can determine river health with our cameras. And so what is the level of pollution in there? Then they'll overlay other data on top of that, social data. If people are tweeting out at 4 a.m. from the factory, they're probably working 24/7. Facebook check-ins, things like that. They mash all that data, and they use it to actually predict the GDP of China. And it's far more accurate than the information coming out of China itself. You can look at buildings from the side and determine how high the building construction is. What is going to be the concrete usage? You can count ships in a port. And all this data comes together, layered with other data, mashed together with other data to basically predict the future. And that's essentially what they're trying to do. So data scientists write algorithms that use data from wherever they can. Our source, geospatial data, other data, and they use it to sell it to hedge funds, people who want to predict oil inventories. Is the price of coffee going to go up or down because of how coffee farms in South America are doing?
Okay, well, talking then about the amount of looking that you do from space, and so we can't have this conversation without talking about privacy. And from your perspective, because you process so much data, so many events, how has privacy? Do you have an awareness that runs parallel to what you do of privacy, or do you start from a privacy perspective, or how do you embed kind of a privacy conscience into what you're doing?
For us, it's the way we install it. So privacy is obviously an enormously complicated question. I'm sure at some point people will be up on the enterprise stage talking about security. The way we deliver our product is we go to the data. So if your data is stored in a data center, we will install at that data center. If your data is stored in the cloud, which I would say most of our customers have their data stored in AWS or Azure or Rackspace, we will install the software there. So we install behind your firewall so that you can use the kind of security you want. Because honestly, I think that trying to embed security into an application is a giant piece to bite off. I actually have an interesting related security question, and it's a story so our company was founded out of the people who wrote the back end of Facebook, my two co-founders. And Facebook had a very interesting story where they were looking at behavior of users. In 2007, Facebook rolled out the news feed. Before that, Facebook used to just be a list of profiles that you could click on and check up on your friends. And then when they rolled out the news feed, people were horrified at the privacy. They're like, oh my God, everyone can see everything I'm doing. And everyone, and I don't want this. And there was a giant revolt against Facebook. They said, please roll it back. This newsfeed thing is ruining Facebook. Nobody wants it. Nobody wants to see every action you're taking. And Mark Zuckerberg at the time had a question. He said, should he roll back the Facebook newsfeed because of all these privacy concerns and people are so concerned, or should he not? And he actually turned to the data. So he looked at behavior data. So this is, this could have been the defining moment in Facebook's history. And what he did was he looked at how people were behaving, and he saw that people were more engaged than they had ever been with Facebook. Like seeing what everyone was doing, and really, seeing what your friends were doing, what they're changing, which friend was making updates when, was driving an enormous amount of usage. They'd never had such good numbers. And even the people who were complaining about the newsfeed were doing it because they saw their other friends complaining about it on the newsfeed.
Yeah.
And so this is one of the examples of a powerful, powerful way to use data to understand what your users are doing, not just what they're saying.
Gotcha.
So this is very much the use case that we go out and try to provide to many other companies. And so users actually didn't truly mind the privacy. They were back there all the time. And thank God he kept it, because I don't know if I would be using Facebook today if it didn't have the newsfeed.
So you talk about consumers there and their reaction to data and how that works. Scott, you just talked about all of the things, all of the business applications, potential revenue from Urthecast. The consumer connection, though, from Urthecast. How have you started to look at that? How us as consumers here today will engage or use even Urthecast over the next year or two?
Yeah, so we're just starting that now, frankly. So when you're working in space, it's incredibly expensive. Everything takes far longer, costs way more. Our first 2 cameras cost about $35 million. The next 2 satellites that we bought cost about 75 million euros. So space is expensive. It's expensive, it takes a long time, and the long pole in the tent is always to get the cameras up and get the data flowing, which is frankly where we are right now. So that data is flowing. We're entering kind of the government market and then going downstream to the B2B market, and then we're getting to the consumer market, frankly, over the next few months. When we opened up our API last fall, just to get some users, we wanted people to come in and test it. We wanted a few hundred people to sign up and give us some feedback. We had about 300,000 people sign up. So we took the first few hundred, got hate mail from the rest who couldn't get in, and it began to build out the usability features based on that. Space is popular. 15 years ago, no one cared, frankly, and people view space differently. Some people think of space, space is there to get beyond. There's people living on the space station, they've been up there for 15 years. With that, we can get back to the moon. And then the moon, we can get to Mars, and so forth. With us, it's a little different. It's more about we get to space so we can look back down on Earth and use that to impact some of the ways we live down here, the way we feed ourselves, the way we monitor what we do. It's not so much about getting to space to go beyond, it's about getting to space to look back down and have some level of impact on Earth for the rest of us.
Is it true that we're about to see the space selfie sometime soon?
Yeah, so we did an agreement with Heineken. They're one of the promoters behind the new James Bond movie, of course. And so this week, actually, there's an event in Las Vegas, just outside of Las Vegas, where there's a few thousand people gathering together. We're going to image it. They call it a spy fee. And it's a James Bond themed event that's going to get wrapped up into the promotion of the new movie coming out over the next couple weeks, Spectre.
I've never heard a better reason to launch satellites.
It's space.
Scott Larson from Urthecast, Ann Johnson from Interana, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you.
Thank you, Andy.